those pork chops in with the beers and the broad. Welcome to my dojo. This is Kung Fu Pizza Party, and I'm your host, Brandon Knight. And today, for the first film review of 2025, I am here to review the 1974 blaxploitation film, Black Belt Jones, starring Jim Kelly. Now let's get right down into this, because I have a lot to say about this film. And of course, here on Kung Fu Pizza Party, I seek to deliver to you all high-flying action in 30 minutes or less and serve up some wisdom one slice at a time. And like I said, got a lot to say about this movie, so let's jump right in. The year is 1974. Black Belt Jones was a big role for Jim Kelly. This was his first solo lead role. He had done a few films prior to this, including in 1973, starring alongside Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon. And that same year of 1974, after Black Belt Jones would come out, he would go on to star alongside Jim Brown and Fred the Hammer Williamson in, you guessed it, Three the Hard Way, which was a film I reviewed back in early November and went on to become the most downloaded episode of 2024. So if you haven't checked that review out yet, I encourage you to go back. Like I said, it was like the first week in November that one came out. Go back and check that one out. Anyway, Black Belt Jones is considered the spiritual successor to Enter the Dragon, although the Jim Kelly does play two different characters in these films. Obviously, he dies in Enter the Dragon. But ironically enough, with this movie being the spiritual successor to Enter the Dragon, there's actually two films that are considered spiritual successors to Black Belt Jones. First, there's Hot Potato, where Jim Kelly plays a character called Jones, so maybe there's a little bit of a connection there. He's not Black Belt Jones, he's just Jones in that movie. Then there's The Tattoo Connection, where he plays a character named Lucas. But The Tattoo Connection was also billed as Black Belt Jones 2. So maybe it's just possible that his full name is Black Belt Lucas Jones. Who knows? Interestingly enough, it was at this point where I realized, Jim Kelly has made a career of having very simple names for his characters. There's a few that's like, that's actually a full name, but a lot of his characters, Mr. Keys, Jones, Black Belt Jones, Lucas, all very simple, easy to remember names. Now, there's a few other key supporting actors and actresses in Black Belt Jones that I do want to highlight as we get through the plot of the film. But before we jump into the plot, I want to go ahead and highlight the director of this film as well, Robert Clouse. Robert Clouse had his hands all over American martial art media from the 70s all the way through till the early to late 90s. He had an impact on the martial art genre here in America. Along with Black Belt Jones, he directed, among other movies, Enter the Dragon. I wonder where he first came across Jim Kelly. He also did Bruce Lee's final film, Game of Death, Jim Cotta, both China O'Brien films, and Ironheart starring Bolo Young. Along with his directing, in 1989, he released what was at the time the definitive biography on Bruce Lee, simply titled Bruce Lee, a Biography. This book went on to become one of the main source materials for the film Dragon, the Bruce Lee story starring Jason Scott Lee. So again, cannot underestimate, you cannot, talk about 70s and all the way through to the 90s martial art media without highlighting the career of Robert Clouse. As for the plot of this film itself, again, Jim Kelly plays Black Belt Jones. He's a hand for hire. He's not like a gun for hire or a mercenary. He's somewhere between like a bodyguard and a bounty hunter. He's just kind of this guy that people hire out to get some work done for them, that the local law enforcement use him to help them work outside of the law that they're trying to uphold. And he is friends with Pop's Bird. Pop's Bird owns a dojo in California. This movie takes place in California. If they said exactly where, I don't remember. But this movie takes place in California, and he is friends with Pop's Bird, who owns a dojo there. Pop's Bird is played by the legendary musician, actor, and voice actor Scatman Crothers. Many will remember Scatman Crothers either from his role as Dick Hallorann in The Shining, or as the voice of the iconic Hanna-Barbera cartoon character Hong Kong Phooey. And yes, listeners, at some point I do plan on doing a full walkthrough of the Hong Kong Phooey series. There was only 13 episodes of the original run, so definitely can make that happen at some point for everybody. As I said, he owns a dojo there in California, and near the place, on the same land area where this dojo is located, the local government is planning on building a new community civic center. And of course, the mafia is trying to get involved. They bought up all of the land and, trying to get their hands in the project to make some money and more connections. But because Pops owns the building and the land that the building is on, their plans have kind of stalled a little bit. So they reach out to a guy who owes them a favor. His name is Pinky. And they go to Pinky and say, you need to get Pops to give up this spot. So Pinky goes to Pops. Pinky had loaned Pops money to get the dojo built, and all throughout the movie, how much money exactly he owes Pops continues to get bigger and bigger as he's like, Pinky continues to come up with reasons to raise the number to continue to put the dojo in a really bad spot. This leads to kind of a classic Hong Kong action movie trope of these back and forth battles between Pinky and his crew and the dojo and the students at the dojo. We see this a lot. You can think of like Fist of Fury, for example, of the invading force trying to desecrate the sacredness of the dojo, to take it over, and the dojo having to fight for their own honor. So we get a lot of back and forth battles between the two sides early on. One of those battles, I think it was the very first one actually, Pops gets out there and starts throwing hands himself. That's right, listeners. We get a taste of what live-action Hong Kong Phooey action would have looked like, and I can confirm he is faster than the human eye. In another showdown between Pinky's crew and the dojo, this is when Black Belt Jones has been called in to help his friend Pops out. Pinky's crew is sneaking into the dojo at night to kind of like wreck up the place. And so what they do is one of the dojo students is by a light switch, and he turns off the lights, and Jim Kelly's like moving around, and then the lights go on, and it's on for like 4 seconds, and Jim Kelly's beating the crap out of whoever's right by him. Then the lights go back out, and then you can hear Pinky's crew going, where did he go? Where did he go? The light comes back on. He's in a different spot. Different people get beaten up, and it kind of repeats this cycle of lights off, lights on. And naturally, as the lights are going on and off and Jim Kelly's beating everyone up and like disappearing in the darkness, people in Pinky's crew, there's shots going off and, you shot me, man. Or of course, at one point someone goes, hey, that's not my hand you're grabbing, all those good things. Well, in one of these scuffles that goes on between the crew and the dojo, unfortunately, Pops gets killed accidentally. It was never really Pinky's plan to actually kill him, threaten him within an inch of his life. Of course, that was always going to be a part of the plan, but didn't really plan on actually killing him. It was completely accidental. At the funeral, which was awesome, by the way, because not only was there a lovely gospel choir singing a hymn, but there was also students from the dojo slowly doing a kata next to the choir, and then at the graveside committal, they were all standing there in horse stance with a punch out. If I continue to get more involved in teaching martial arts, when I die, there better be students doing kata slowly near my casket. That I will haunt people if that does not happen. But at the funeral, Pops' estranged daughter, Sydney, arrives. And naturally, she wants vengeance. Sydney is played by Gloria Hendry. Gloria Hendry starred in a few blaxploitation films, including Black Caesar and Hell Up in Harlem, but is most likely going to be remembered as the Bond girl Rosie in Live or Let Die. Fun fact about Live or Let Die, the intro to that film, the Flaming Skull and the Paul McCartney song, scared the bejabbers out of me as a kid. I watched a lot of Bond movies when I was a kid. My parents were really into the James Bond franchise. And I could not stay in the room and watch that part. It terrified me as a child. Watching Roger Moore run across the tops of all those alligators, that scene I could still watch on loop to this day. But that opening title sequence, it gave me the willies. Anyway, Sydney, Black Belt Jones, some of his friends, and the dojo students come together and they make a plan. And that plan is they are going to rob the mafia. They're going to rob the mafia, and then they are going to plant the money on Pinky, so that way there can be vengeance and hopefully some mutually assured destruction. And this is one of the points in the movie where some of the spiritual successorness to Enter the Dragon started to kick in for me, because it did feel very much like those scenes in Enter the Dragon when Bruce Lee is kind of sneaking around the compound and doing a little espionage work. There was a little bit of like a espionage heist vibe to this point of the movie. And it almost worked. They do rob the mafia. They do leave a tip to the mafia boss. And also, as soon as Jim Kelly walks out of the phone booth where he left the anonymous tip, he looks at everyone and says, "All right, let's go to McDonald's." I wish there was Black Belt Joan Happy Meal toys for me to go collect, but sadly there is not. However, instead of Pinky being taken out by the mafia or some kind of like big scuffle between the two sides, Pinky is able to get the mafia to hear him out, and they all realize, oh yeah, Black Belt Jones has set us all up. So the movie eventually ends with a big clash between Pinky's crew, the mafia, Black Belt Jones, and Sydney, and wouldn't you know, the good guys went out in the end. Hooray! Overall, I did really enjoy Black Belt Jones, and I feel like when I was younger, Jim Kelly was just kind of there. But as an adult, I am really starting to appreciate Jim Kelly. He's awesome. He's ripped. He's good looking, and oh my gosh, I said this in the Three the Hard Way review, when he's hitting some of these stuntmen, I don't know how he's not busting everybody up. Like I can feel it sitting on my couch watching this film. He is a hard hitting person, and he does bring his own unique flavor to the genre as well. In this movie, he whips out the butterfly kick several times over. As we all know, the butterfly kick is the coolest, most ineffective kick possible. It's really cool looking, but you have to put so much of yourself into it that if it gets countered even slightly, you're going down. But I do admit, if you actually could pull off a butterfly kick in a self-defense situation or an MMA fight, like, it's going to deal out some damage. And it does here. It is also the crispiest butterfly kick I have ever seen in my life. Oh my gosh. By the way, if you're wondering what the most uncool, ineffective kick is, that's the crane kick. Anyway, and even though Bruce Lee has passed by this point and we're entering the Bruceploitation era and everyone's trying to capitalize, sadly, off of Bruce Lee's death and trying to create the next Bruce Lee, Jim Kelly is still his own person. There are some moments where I'm like, okay, I can kind of see some Bruce Lee here in this scene. There was one in particular where Sidney pulls out a gun and shoots up a bunch of plates or dishes or something. And Black Belt Jones gives her this wide-eyed side glance that was a combination of like amazement and also concern, which is a look I'm pretty sure I've seen Bruce Lee do in just about every single one of his movies. Like you definitely learned that one from the Bruce Lee School of Acting, Jim Kelly. But for as much as I liked this movie, there were some things about it that just did not sit well with me. I think if I could do the short summary of some of the stuff I have with this movie, is that it was kind of like a Saturday Night Live sketch that went on a little too long. The movie had a natural ending point. You could have had some kind of the mafia takes out Pinky, or there's some type of scuffle between the two, the Pinky's crew and the mafia, and they kind of take each other out situation, and it all kind of works out that way. But honestly, it's after that point when Pinky and the mafia team up that the movie takes a big downward turn for me, especially in the scene immediately following that when Pinky and the mafia team up. The beach scene right after that. I promised to make these episodes, to give you these episodes in 30 minutes or less, but I have to talk about the beach scene even if this episode goes longer than 30 minutes. We have to address that scene. But before we get to the beach scene, like, again, there was just some of these not only was it a little, it wasn't necessarily that the movie was long by any means. It's a reasonably length film. It was just kind of like you had an ending point and then you added a whole additional ending, I guess. But it's one of those where it's like, you had them and then you lost me. You had me and then you lost me. There was the usual, sadly, the sadly usual, boy, the things that we were turning a blind eye to in the 70s, we definitely continue to not age well. Just those things that, like, it never should have been okay to do or to say in a movie, and it just, now it just really makes the film dated and a little icky. For example, like I said, the mafia's in this movie, so you can imagine every Italian American stereotype shoved into this part. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the Don's name was Big Tuna, and when the mafia realizes that they're being robbed in this one heist scene, one of the guys literally goes, "Mamma mia," with like the hand gesturing and the whole thing. There's also the use a few times in this movie of the homophobic slur that starts with the letter F. So it's just those kind of things that's like, it seems like we have to talk about it anytime we're talking about a movie from the 70s. It seems like, of like, wow, why were we? Yeah, that was never okay. We shouldn't have been okay with it then. Anyway. But along with that, there were just these moments that just makes me go, I feel like you're trying to. Okay. I know that the last thing that the African American community wants right now is a white 30-year-old Midwestern guy telling them what was wrong about a blaxploitation film. I understand that is the last thing anybody wants. Allow me to at least put this forward first, okay? I am not a snobby film bro. Okay, I know if I'm going to start picking apart black art, that it could maybe be perceived as like, oh, you're just some snobby film buff who thinks he knows everything. Let me just say these three things that will prove I am not a snobby male film bro. Okay, ready? 1, I think Quentin Tarantino is overrated. 2, I think Christopher Nolan is overrated. 3, I've never seen Fight Club. There you go. I have proven it. I am not a snobby, white, male film buff, okay? I've proven it to you all now. And please don't ask me if I like Wes Anderson. I don't want to lie and say I think he's overrated. I do. No one's perfect, okay? I do like Wes Anderson. Give me one, okay? Give at least the least problematic of the 3. Anyway, so with that being said, there are certain points of this movie where it felt like it was trying to be black. It is worth pointing out that this is a Warner Brothers movie. And Warner Brothers, then, now, and forever, likes to appeal to everybody all of the time, even when we don't ask them to do that. And throughout this movie, there's just these points where it's like you're really trying to make it something, and you're forcing it here, guys. For example, on this idea of like this movie is like trying to be black, trying to appeal to a black audience. There's this scene where Pinky and one of the guys from his crew are walking down the sidewalk, and randomly Pinky bursts out into this rhyming thing about how much he likes money. It just kind of seemed like, why do you need to have him do some little rhyming skabbity-bap thing right here? The other part of this movie that kind of made me go, this feels like we're forcing something here, was the final fight scene between Black Belt Jones and Pinky's crew and the Mafia is at a car wash. And it is a cool visual because there's like soap bubbles and foam everywhere, but not on Black Belt Jones. He is completely uncovered from soap bubbles the whole time, but Pinky's crew and the Mafia, they're covered in bubbles the entire fight. So it was a cool visual, but there was something like, really, we're gonna have this fight at a car wash? That just seems like we're trying to make this appeal because I don't even know how to say this. Like, it just seems like we're trying to appeal. They were trying to appeal to to African American moviegoers because, this is like a thing in their movie, so we're gonna put it here. And it just like, I don't know, it just didn't quite work. I don't think, at least. Along with these moments of, I think you're kind of forcing things here, guys. There was also Sydney's character. When Sydney is first introduced, she is confident. She can take care of herself. She is no nonsense. Actually, after the funeral, she goes to Pinky's hideout and single-handedly beats up a bunch of his crew members. She can take care of herself. She has inherited her father's martial art ability, and every martial artist out there with kids know that is something that for some reason can be inherited. My son, producer Cooper, he's 2. I got my old focus mitt out. I was going to take it to work to use for training my ninjas, and it never made it to my car because as soon as he saw it, he instinctively knew what to do with it. And now he's got a pretty decent jab cross combo for a 2-year-old. Anyway, so Sydney is introduced as like this, I can take care of myself, strong, independent woman. Then there's the beach scene. And then after the beach scene, which is kind of when this movie tails off a little bit for me, she then just becomes the love interest character, the woman, the designated woman of the movie. That end fight scene with Black Belt Jones and the Pinky's crew and the Mafia, she's there, already established. She's a great fighter, doesn't do a single thing to contribute to the fight. She just stands there and observes, kind of like the villains in the Batman TV show from the 60s. She just kind of stands there and observes, and as Black Belt Jones beats up people, he tosses them her direction, and then she tosses them into the back of a garbage truck. There is one exception. One of those guys tries to fight back against her, and she does the back elbow to the gut, but instead of going up with the back fist to the face, she goes down, grabs him by the crotch, and walks him into the back of the garbage truck. Great visual. It would have made Balls Cajonte weep with joy. But there was just this, like, you had something great there with this character. This strong, like, person to go alongside Black Belt Jones, and then you just can completely, what is it that the kids say? They completely nerfed her and just like, okay, now you're just the love interest character. Man, that's a bummer. That part really did bum me out. So, as much as I enjoyed this movie, it still had its issues. If you're coming to this movie wanting to see some great fight sequences, oh yeah, they are aplenty here. I'm saving one of them to kind of be the way to lift our spirits after I talk about the beach scene. But it still has its faults, I guess is what I'm trying to point out here. And it looks like we are going to come in over 30 minutes, but I have to talk about the beach scene. So this movie kind of floats around a couple different genres. It's an action movie for sure. It's blaxploitation. It's got martial art, kung fu movie vibes to it. It's got spy espionage vibes to it. Heck, it's the 70s. There's even a great car chase scene at one point. You know, it's kind of the total package. Again, if you're looking for a good action movie, it's kind of got the total package to it. But then there's the beach scene. So Pinky and the Mafia have teamed up because they realize Black Belt Jones is trying to set them up. It then cuts to Black Belt Jones and Sydney on a beach because they're in California. And it's kind of this like playful, like flirty fighting kind of starts up. Not that they're like yelling at each other, but they're starting to get a little rough with each other, you know, kind of tossing each other into the sand a little bit. And honestly, if the movie would have had and Pinky's crew and the Mafia takes each other out, and then it cuts to them kind of getting a little flirty, a little, you know, rough and tumble, and then the movie ends, still would have been okay. But basically what happens is that then what feels like an eternity, this movie becomes a teen beach movie. Teen beach movies were like this B genre in the 60s through the 70s. They all starred Tommy Kirk. Somehow he was in all of them. And basically it was these movies about horny teenagers who wanted to flirt and surf and sing. That's what all these movies are about. And that's basically what this ended up being. They're quirky and campy films. And that's just what this ended up being. No, Jim Kelly doesn't sing. And I think we're all okay with that. But you know, the flirty, like, tough fighting then turns into Jim Kelly chasing her around the beach. There's a beach bum playing the guitar, so she takes the guitar and is waving it around, accidentally smashes it. There's a kid's birthday party going on, and she's hiding in the balloon, so Jim Kelly has to use his karate to pop all of the balloons to find her. There's even this sequence where they're, like, near sand dunes, and it's them like popping their heads out around different corners and crawling around in the sand trying to find it turns into this like really goofy campy comedy, like starting off the final third of the movie, and I was like, what is going on here? I think if the tone was set at comedy, if the whole movie was a teen beach movie comedy action film with Jim Kelly, I would have been fine with that. What was that movie in the 90s? Surf Ninjas or whatever? Like, if it was some kind of like goofy, campy thing like that the entire time, I think I would have been into it. But it's just like this thing right here in what is otherwise a fairly serious action film, you know, it's like, and I was like, what is this? This is so weird. Okay, so yeah, we are going to come in a little over 30 minutes, but let me just end off my review of the film here talking about my favorite fight scene. We're going to lift our spirits here. we're going to talk about my favorite fight scene, which actually was the very first one with Jim Kelly. Basically, the movie starts with like some of the mafia stuff, but we're introduced to Jim Kelly. Basically, it's one of those action movie things of it's not explained what's going on. Like, just guess. So my guess is what it looks like is he was hired by a bunch of old rich guys to be the bodyguard of these guys for the day, and he's walking them to their car in a parking lot in broad daylight, by the way, outside in broad daylight, and there's a bunch of assassins there to take out these old dudes. So Jim Kelly naturally has to like take out these guys, and this is one of those moments where you just see like how hard hitting this guy was. Oh my gosh. But also great use of his environment around him. At one point, there's a guy attacking him from the front and a guy lunging at him from behind with a knife. He takes out the guy in front of him, but opens up the car door next to him, and the guy coming at him from behind with the knife goes through the window and like takes himself out. But the best part of this opening fight sequence, beyond the hard hitting, beyond the great use of the environment, is that once he cleans house, it turns out, one of the assassin dudes, he was just faking being knocked out. So he gets up and he takes off running, right? We've seen that before. Jim Kelly reaches down, takes the gun from one of the assassin dudes, and shoots him across the parking lot. But he doesn't kill him, or shoot him in the leg, which would impede him from running, or graze him in the arm so that way he can, be tracked or something because there's blood everywhere. No. From where the guy grabs, he shoots him in the ass. He just straight up shoots the guy in the butt cheek, and he's hopping around, grabbing his booty, just, he's got 2 holes now, jumping around, and the best part about it is Jim Kelly puts the gun down, gets in his car, and drives away. No follow-up with that guy. We don't know if he bled out through his butt cheeks or, if he was the one that was investigated by the police to figure out what was going on. But it was just like, what just happened? That was great. And maybe if I go back and rewatch it again, I'll realize that the movie was a comedy the whole time, and that makes the beach scene better. But whatever. Would I watch Black Belt Jones again? Yes, I would, though. Like I said, overall, I did enjoy this movie for its, even with its faults. I did enjoy this movie. And would I buy a physical media copy of it? Already did. I have a movie set that's got this one, 3 the Hard Way, and Hot Potato, which next time I get a Jim Kelly itch, that will probably be the next one that I review is Hot Potato. But we definitely need to end this episode because we're a little over 30 minutes. I know I make my promises and I do my best to deliver. Last week was a very short episode where I talked to James Gunn about how he can possibly interest us, the martial art viewer, to get us interested more in the DC Universe relaunch thing. But thank you all for listening to today's episode. If you haven't yet already, please consider rating and reviewing this show wherever you get your podcasts. It takes like 3 clicks on Spotify. If you use Spotify, it takes like 2 clicks in order to make that happen. And pass this episode along to a friend, someone you know who also enjoys the work of Jim Kelly or Scatman Crothers, whatever the case may be, Gloria Hendry, any of them. Pass this episode along to someone you think will enjoy it. And make sure you're following the show on Instagram at Kung Fu Pizza Party. The conversation's going on over there every week. There's some conversational posts, and you can find out ahead of time what's going to be reviewed here on the show. Thank you again for listening. This has been Kung Fu Pizza Party, where I've almost delivered high-flying action in 30 minutes or less and served up some wisdom one slice at a time.